Cultured chicken has been declared safe, but the FDA submission contained some eyebrow-raising details. Last month, the US Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, issued a memo saying that they have no questions about the safety of a process for making cultured chicken meat. The No More Questions memo is a safety approval, or sort of. This isn't the same as regulatory approval for cultured meat. The FDA safety memo is specific to a particular production process used by a single manufacturer, Upside Foods. The manufacturer still needs to get regulatory approval from the US Department of Agriculture, the USDA, on the actual chicken products before they can go to market. Juicy details about the manufacturing process. The FDA shared the company's pre-market notice, the document intended to show that the food is safe, and that document, all 104 pages of it, explains in detail how Upside Food makes their cultured cell chicken. The company explains that their process occurs in two main stages. In stage 1, they find and choose the chicken cells that will be used to make the food. Stage 2 is making the food by replicating those cells in big tanks or vessels. Stage 1 is called cell banking by Upside Foods. In the cell banking stage, the company prepares banks of animal cells. The cells are isolated from healthy chickens and chicken embryos, then screened, genetically engineered, tested, and prepared. Hold up a minute. Genetically engineered? Yep. More on that in a minute. Stage 2 is meat production. The company starts by making media, which is the liquid in which they grow the cells. They cultivate the cells from the cell bank by repeating multiple generations of cultivation in the liquid media until they've got enough cell mass to start turning it into muscle tissue. At that point, the cells are moved to a tissue cultivation vessel where the cells transform from identical cells into actual tissue in that they differentiate to form the different cells that make the structure of a piece of muscle. The document doesn't really explain exactly how Upside Foods encourages the cell to switch from replicating mode to tissue-making mode, but it's probably related to the components of the media in the tissue cultivation vessel. When enough muscle tissue has been grown, it is filtered out of the liquid and washed off, de-wetted, tested, and made into food. Food safety considerations. The company's original pre-market notification document and their subsequent answers to the FDA's questions explain how Upside Food identified food safety hazards and how they control such hazards in their process. Much of it is standard chicken safety stuff, addressing hazards like Salmonella, Campylobacter, and avian human viruses, just as in conventional chicken production processes. Chemical hazards from growth media and cultivation vessels are also addressed, with almost no food safety surprises, except for prions. The big question, what about prions? Prions could be in the growth media or in the animal cells themselves. Prions are proteins that have gone rogue and started behaving like viruses for reasons that science doesn't fully understand. The most famous prion disease is mad cow disease, a disease linked to the human disease Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which infected humans who ate prion-contaminated beef in the 1990s. Prion's rogue behaviour is contagious, which means that if a rogue protein, a prion, from an infected animal comes into contact with a normal protein, it can turn that protein rogue as well. The rogue behaviour spreads, and this results in illness and death for the infected animal. Prions are very heat stable, unlike viruses, which means that even cooked animal products can be infective. Worse still, there are no analytical tests for prions. Prions are believed to cause the human diseases Kuru and Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which cause fatal brain degradation. A small number of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease cases were caused by eating contaminated beef products from cattle that carry the disease bovine spongiform encephalopathy, BSE, or mad cow disease. It is thought that blood components like animal serum may act as vectors for transmitting prions. Animal serum is used in cultured meat processes. Serum is animal blood that is absent of cells and clotting factors, the acellular liquid fraction derived from whole blood. Serum could be risky. In fact, a scientific paper on the safety of cultured meat from 2021 says the most apparent safety issues may arise from the use of animal serum in the culture medium, and cultured meat grown in fetal bovine serum-based media can be exposed to viruses or infectious prion. Upside Foods say they are trying to phase out the use of whole animal serum and serum constituents during the meat production stage of their process. Potential hazards associated with the use of animal serum, according to Upside Foods, include possible contamination with mycoplasma, viruses, endotoxins, veterinary drugs, and prions. Controls for prions in cultured meat. Not so good. The company says they control hazards in serum by testing for microorganisms and filter sterilising the serum, and that they only source bovine serum from countries that are a negligible risk for bovine spongiform encephalopathy, or BSE. Testing for microorganisms, however, will not control prions. Filter sterilising might not remove prions because they're relatively small molecules. And according to the USDA, the risk mitigation strategies for prions in meat and meat products rely mainly on the elimination of tissues and organs known to harbour BSE infectivity in infected animals. In essence, then, the only way to be sure that you don't have prions in your food is to avoid sourcing from BSE infected animals. Unfortunately, there is no test to detect BSE in live animals. Controls for prions in cell banking processes in cultured meat production. Okay for poultry? The company does not include tests for prions in their cell line bank testing, even though they test for pathogens and zoonotic viruses. As a reminder though, prions can't be tested for. The good news is, and weirdly, Upside Foods doesn't mention this in their document, the chickens seem to be resistant to forming prions, and spontaneous prion diseases don't occur to our knowledge in chickens. This is good. Perhaps it's the reason why Upside Foods have focused on chicken rather than beef. So what about prions in cultured beef? If chicken proteins appear to be resistant to prion formation, beef products are not resistant. They are susceptible to prions and prion diseases. During cultured meat production, a single cow cell is multiplied millions of times to make human food. If such a cell carried hidden prions, the results could be catastrophic. Before we all freak out about prions in cultured beef, it's worth remembering that in the past, prion diseases seem to have only been passed through food when people have eaten nerve tissue such as brain and spinal cord, or beef products contaminated with such tissue. As far as we know, pure uncontaminated muscle meat is much lower risk for prions than nerve tissue, but that's not to say the risk is non-existent. This scientific paper says that the proteins that turn rogue to become prions are mostly present in nerve tissue in adult animals, but they can also be found in the intestines, heart, pancreas, and liver of adult animals, and that cow embryos also contain those proteins. With prions being impossible to test for and resistant to normal controls like cooking, the fact that prions could perhaps end up in cultured beef is definitely food for thought. Genetic engineering in cultured meat production. The Upside Foods document contained another surprising detail. Chicken cells for cultured meat are genetically engineered to make them immortal. Normal animal cells can only replicate and divide a certain number of times before they start being affected by age-related deterioration, called senescence, and finally submit to biologically programmed cell death. This limits how much tissue can be made from a group of cells. Upside Foods says they overcome this limitation by inducing functional immortality, using either spontaneous immortalization or by bioengineering the cells. The spontaneously immortal cells are naturally occurring. However, some types of cells that are needed to make chicken meat do not exhibit spontaneous immortalization, so genetic amendments are required. The process involves introducing genes that are already part of the chicken genome to induce functional immortality. The cells are made immortal by adding or activating genes that repair telomeres in the cells and stop them from degrading. Telomere degradation is a key feature of cell aging. The genetically engineered immortal cells do not actually get used forever. They have a working lifespan limited by their observed proliferative capacity. Chemical residues in the meat. Another surprising aspect of the upside food safety protocols are that residues of culture media could get into the meat, and the hazards that they pose are controlled by it's diluted. Culture media is the nutrient-rich liquid in which the cells are grown during stage 1 of the production process. Some of this liquid carries over into the actual meat. Most of it is probably quite safe and wholesome. Most of it. Upside Food says that the majority of the ingredients are naturally occurring nutritive substances that are metabolized and biosynthesized naturally by poultry. But it's not the majority of natural, safe food-grade ingredients that we should be worried about, but the minority of ingredients that might not be natural or food-grade. We don't know what these other minor ingredients are exactly, but we do know that the manufacturer might use ingredients that aren't actually food-grade. Upside Foods says in their document, and I'm quoting here, culture media aids that are not yet available commercially as food grade will be subject to Upside Foods' internal quality assurance and food safety systems. Will that make them safe? Hopefully. Whatever the mystery culture ingredients are, it seems like a good idea to keep them out of the meat. So what process does Upside Foods intend to use to keep them out of the food? Plain old dilution. The early stages of culturing have fewer cells, the meat-making process has more cells, and the early stage culture medium is therefore diluted during the proliferation process. Here's what the manufacturer has to say about it. Through calculation, Upside Foods demonstrates that media components used in the pre-banking stage dilute out to below the threshold of toxicological concern. That's comforting. Maybe. Animals still need to die to make cultured chicken. Cultured meat production needs an ongoing supply of fresh cow fetuses, at least for now. Getting animal cells to grow outside the body is a tricky business. Without blood vessels and other structures that usually deliver nutrients and remove waste, free-floating animal cells need to be bathed in a rich liquid that promotes their growth and helps them flourish. The liquid used in cultured cell production processes contains a rich mix of proteins and growth promoters, usually derived from the non-hemoglobin parts of animal blood, serum. The best animal serum contains the most efficient growth-promoting elements and is derived from the blood of fetuses, usually bovine or cow fetuses. Yep, baby cows excised from their pregnant mothers at slaughter are drained of their blood to produce the cultured meat industry's miracle grow juice, fetal bovine serum. FBS. Fetal bovine serum supplies are dependent on the slaughtering of cows, which goes against the cultured meat industry's stated goal of improving animal welfare and reducing our reliance on farmed animals. It's also outrageously expensive. One cultured meat expert estimated in 2018 that it takes 50 litres of serum to make a single cultured beef burger. At a cost of hundreds of dollars per litre of FBS, the cost is so prohibitive that the authors of another scientific paper, and as always I link the sources in the original post, state that a serum requirement for the cultured meat manufacturing process would render it completely infeasible at scale. The cultured meat industry is working hard to find alternatives to FBS for its culture media, and at least one company has declared success in removing the need for FBS in its process. Upside Foods has not. Upside Foods says it is currently optimizing its process to phase out the use of whole animal serum as well as animal serum constituents during the meat production phase. So for now, their cultured meat still relies on the slaughtering of animals. Cow hormones in cultured chicken. You might be surprised to learn that cultured chicken meat is likely to contain bovine or cow growth factors, hormones. But here's the good news, no human protein. Huh? Getting chicken cells to grow outside a chicken body is difficult, but growth-promoting chemicals help. In fact, such chemicals are a necessary input for the production of cultured meat. There are many different compounds that can promote growth, including hormones, which are small biological molecules that can interact with receptors inside cells. You might imagine that chicken cells would grow best with chicken-specific growth promoters, but the Upside Foods process makes use of bovine or cow growth factors, not chicken growth factors, at least for now. For as long as their culture media contains fetal bovine serum, it also contains bovine growth factors. It isn't clear how much of these cow-derived hormones will end up in the final chicken meat. Perhaps not much, but this mixed species growing system makes the meat seem perhaps a little more Frankenstein and a little less clean and green than their marketing department might like. The good news? No human proteins. Well, that's comforting. Upside Foods explains in its response to the FDA's request for clarification that the company does not use human cell culture systems and that human recombinant growth factors are avoided. Glad we got that cleared up, but I can't believe they had to spell it out in their submission. Growth factors are not explicitly approved as novel food ingredients, but they are naturally present in conventionally raised meat. The company assured the FDA that it only uses growth factors with protein sequences that are 100% homologous to those from agriculturally imported animals with a history of safe consumption, e.g. bovine, porcine, chicken. Porcine? That means pigs. I wonder what the kosher authorities would say about that. Where to from here? Being able to make animal meat in a bioreactor is a phenomenal technological achievement, and any company that can do so should be congratulated. But that doesn't mean I will be eating cultured meat anytime soon. As a food safety expert, I have concerns about the risks posed by prions in cultured meat, especially meat made with non-poultry cells or mammalian inputs like bovine serum. Separate to any safety concerns, the recent release of information about a cultured chicken manufacturing process shows that there are aspects of the cultured meat industry that many consumers would find distasteful or worrying. These include the use of hormones from other animals, the need for animal fetus products, and the use of genetic engineering technologies. Cultured meat production is powerful modern technology to be celebrated, but it may never become a large-scale contributor to our global human food supplies. And as always, you can find the sources in the links that are provided in the description of this video.